I'm James Carter. The silence outside that door was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, not like the rest of the village. It was the silence of presence, of waiting. It stretched, thin and brittle, each second a lifetime, broken only by the ragged, terrified sound of our own breathing. Someone was there, just inches away on the other side of the wooden door at the top of the stairs, listening, waiting. Day 14. 14 days since the world tilted on its axis, and every day brings a new kind of monster. And the predators aren't always the ones with claws and teeth. My hand was slick with sweat on the grip of the pistol I held. My lean, unshaven face felt frozen in a mask of fear and readiness. My tired hazel eyes wide and fixed on the dark gap of the stairwell opening. We were spread out in the upstairs room, weapons raised, every muscle screaming with tension. Ivan, a rock of grim readiness, his rifle aimed steady at the top of the stairs, a silent, unwavering force. Sasha, a coiled spring of fear and adrenaline, machete held tight, her injured leg forgotten for the moment, her breathing shallow but controlled. Artem, his young face a mask of pure, raw terror, gripping his crowbar so tightly his knuckles were white, his body trembling almost uncontrollably, his haunted blue eyes wide and fixed on the doorway. Yuri, a statue in the corner, knife held low, his eyes fixed not just on the stairwell, but seeming to take in the whole room, assessing, calculating. His expression was utterly unreadable, an enigma even in this moment of shared peril. He was a mystery in human form, and in moments like this, that was more terrifying than any shuffling corpse outside. The footsteps had stopped, abruptly, but the presence was still there. A heavy, waiting silence from just beyond the wooden door at the top of the stairs. The faint sound of breathing continued, slow and steady. It was human, definitely human, not the wet gurgle of an infected. But who? Friend or foe? In this world, the lines between them were so blurred they were almost invisible. Trust was a luxury we couldn't afford, and suspicion was a shield we all wore. My mind raced, trying to anticipate. Were they alone? Were they part of the group that had abandoned this village? Were they hostile survivors, preying on those who sought shelter? Were they connected to the creature, the chimera, that had led us here? Minutes stretched into an eternity. Every second felt like a lifetime under the weight of that silent observation. My imagination conjured possibilities. A lone, desperate survivor, a small, armed gang, someone infected but not fully turned, moving with a horrifying semblance of human control. The tension was unbearable. My temples pounded. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Ivan shifted slightly, a tiny adjustment of his weight, the only movement from his rigid form. It was a silent signal. We couldn't stay like this forever. The tension had to break. Something had to happen. And then, a voice, low, rough, Russian, spoken from just outside the door. Naverhu кто-то есть. Someone is upstairs. The words were calm, declarative, not a question. They knew. They had heard us, perhaps heard us enter, heard us moving upstairs, heard our terrified breathing in the silence. The implication was chilling. They had been quiet, listening, waiting for us to reveal ourselves. Like hunters. Another voice answered, also low, equally cautious. Slyshu. Будь готов. I hear. Be ready. Two of them at least. Maybe more hiding in the shadows downstairs. My grip tightened on the pistol. This was it. Confrontation. The moment where the unknown would be revealed. Ivan lowered his rifle slightly, but kept it pointed towards the stairwell opening, ready to bring it up in an instant. His voice was steady, calm, cutting through the tension. "Minichatim problem," he called out. "We don't want problems." A simple statement, a cautious offer of non-aggression. Silence from downstairs stretched again. Then, a dry chuckle echoed up the stairwell. It wasn't a sound of humor, but something colder, more cynical. "Проблемы. Они сами нас находят." Problems. They find us themselves. Not exactly a friendly response. It carried the weight of someone who had seen too much, who expected the worst from any encounter, someone hardened by this world. It didn't ease my suspicion. A moment later, slow, deliberate footsteps on the stairs again, ascending. No attempt at stealth now. They were coming up, coming to face us. We braced ourselves, weapons raised, eyes fixed on the stairwell opening. The seconds ticked by, heavy with anticipation. The sounds of their ascent were slow, measured, heavy. Each creak of the old wooden stairs, a hammer blow against the silence. Coming for us, two figures appeared at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the slightly less dark landing. Human shapes, both carrying rifles. Behind them, the stairwell was dark, hiding whatever else might be lurking below. "Покажите руки," Ivan said again, his voice firm, leaving no room for ambiguity. "Show your hands." The first figure hesitated at the threshold of the room, then slowly raised his hands, rifles still held loosely, not pointed at us, but not lowered either. A precarious balance. The second figure did the same, their movements cautious. They stepped out onto the landing, into the dim gray light filtering from the boarded windows of the upstairs hallway. Two men, dressed in scavenged clothes, layers of worn, mismatched fabrics, tactical vests, sturdy boots. They looked like survivors, but heavily armed survivors. They looked tired, like us, like everyone in this world. But there was a hardness in their eyes, a wariness that spoke of difficult choices made, of violence witnessed, and perhaps enacted. Not soldiers, by their dress, not infected, just others. Other humans, navigating the same nightmare. The tension was still thick, a palpable barrier between us. "Myslishali shum," the first one said, his voice still rough, his eyes scanning each of us quickly. "Подумали. Может, твари." We heard noise. Thought, maybe creatures. "Мы тоже," Ivan replied, his voice measured. "Искали укрытие." We too looked for shelter. The standoff lingered, neither side lowering their weapons completely. Trust was a currency worth more than gold out here, and spent just as quickly, if it existed at all. My mind raced. Were they telling the truth? Were they just survivors looking for shelter from the storm? Or from something else? Had they been in the village when the creature came? Did they know what happened to the inhabitants? Their presence was a new variable, a new unknown in an already volatile equation. Artem was still trembling slightly beside me, his eyes darting between the two newcomers and the dark stairwell opening below. His haunted blue eyes reflected a deep, raw fear. Sasha's gaze was sharp, assessing them, her machete held ready, her body tense. Yuri remained silent, a shadow in the corner, his eyes on the newcomers, his expression giving nothing away. Was he evaluating their threat level, or did he recognize them? The mystery of Yuri deepened in every human encounter. The first man, the one who had spoken, had a scar across his cheek, a thin white line that disappeared into his stubble. He looked around the room, his eyes lingering on each of us for a moment. On Sasha's injured leg, on Artem's young, terrified face, on Yuri's unsettling stillness, on my camera slung around my neck, a strange artifact in this world. Mnogo vas, he said, his voice flat, a statement, not a question, tallying our numbers. There are many of you. Dostatochno, Ivan replied simply. Enough. A quiet assertion of our strength, or perhaps just our presence. A tense silence fell again. The rain continued to drum on the roof, a drumming counterpoint to the frantic beat of my heart. The wind sighed through the gaps in the boarding. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with suspicion, with the weight of our shared, brutal reality. How many similar standoffs had each of us experienced? How many had ended badly? Then, the second man spoke. He was younger than the first, his face thinner, his eyes more nervous, darting around the room and towards the windows, towards the door below. Видели что-то большое? Ночью? Did you see something big? Last night? My blood ran cold. They had seen it, or heard it. The creature, the chimera. They had been out there. Ivan's face remained impassive. Видели? He confirmed, his voice low. We saw. The younger man's eyes widened slightly, reflecting the fear he clearly felt about the creature. Оно пришло сюда, в деревню. It came here, to the village. His voice was low, a hushed tone filled with dread. The first man's, Alexei's, gaze sharpened, fixed on Ivan. Где остальные? He asked, looking around the empty room, his voice dropping slightly. Те, кто здесь был? Where are the others? Those who were here. The question hung heavy in the air, the unspoken implication clear. What happened to the people who lived here? Had the creature taken them? Or had they fled? Ivan's silence was the answer. We didn't know for sure, but we suspected the worst. The empty houses, the abandoned belongings, it all pointed to a sudden, horrifying event. The two newcomers exchanged a look. A grim understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the brutal reality of this world. They knew what that creature was capable of. They knew what its arrival likely meant for the village inhabitants. It was a shared horror, a common enemy. The tension in the room began to shift. The immediate threat from each other was still present, a low hum beneath the surface, a wary distrust that would take time to dissipate. But a new, shared understanding was beginning to form. We had both encountered the same nightmare. We were both just trying to survive its aftermath. The mutual suspicion didn't vanish, but the common enemy outside was a powerful, unifying force. Меня зовут Alexei, the first man said, finally breaking the strained silence, taking a small step forward. My name is Alexei. He gestured to the younger man, who nodded nervously. Это Igor. This is Igor. Ivan, Ivan replied, offering no more than his name, his stance still cautious. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke, my voice a little hoarse. James. Sasha gave a curt, sharp nod, her eyes still assessing them. Artem just watched them, his haunted blue eyes wide and fixed on their faces, trying to discern threat or safety. Yuri remained silent, a shadow in the corner, his eyes on the newcomers, his expression giving nothing away. Alexei looked at my camera again, slung around my neck. Ты снимаешь? You film? There was a note of surprise in his voice. I nodded. Пытаюсь. Для тех, кто, может, остался. Trying. For those who might be left. An attempt to explain the inexplicable urge to document this horror. He was silent for a moment, his gaze sharp. Странное занятие. Сейчас, strange occupation. Now, he didn't sound judgmental, just stating a fact. In a world where survival was the only currency, documenting seemed absurd. Igor, the younger man, was still looking nervous, his eyes darting towards the boarded windows, towards the door below. The silence of the village outside seemed to press in on him. Derevnya, pustaya, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The village is empty. The emptiness felt wrong, unnatural. Alexei's expression was grim. Оно забрало их, или что-то другое. It took them, or something else. He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping across the overturned furniture, then back to the stairwell. The uncertainty, the fear of the unknown fate of the village inhabitants. It was a universal language we all understood. Had they been taken by the chimera? Had they fled only to meet a worse fate? Had they turned? We talked in low voices, trading fragmented pieces of information. They had been in the woods, scavenging, when they heard the scream, followed the sounds to the edge of the village, drawn by fear and perhaps a grim curiosity, saw the creature's distinct trail leading into the village, came looking for survivors, or perhaps just answers. They hadn't seen the creature itself in the village, just the trail and the silence, and now the fresh signs of recent habitation in the house they had just entered, which we had also seen. It was clear the village was a death trap. The creature had been here. The inhabitants were gone, and now we were in the house they'd fled from, or been taken from, trapped by our own curiosity and the need for shelter. As we spoke, a subtle, unsettling change began to happen outside the immediate confines of the house. The drumming rain lessened further, softening to a whisper on the roof. The wind died down almost completely. The silence of the village became even more profound, an unnatural stillness, as if the world outside was holding its breath. Ivan, who had been listening intently throughout our tense conversation, his head cocked to one side, suddenly stiffened. His body went rigid. Alexei and Igor fell silent immediately, their eyes snapping towards Ivan, sensing his tension. We all listened, strain our ears. From the distance at first, a low sound, a groan, then another, and another. Not scattered like before, more concentrated, louder, growing. A chilling chorus of inhuman sounds. It was the unmistakable sound of the infected, a lot of them, moving together. A restless, shuffling tide. Ivan moved quickly, quietly to a boarded window, carefully peering out through a crack in the old wood. His body was rigid with a new kind of tension, one born not of suspicion of other humans, but of pure, primal fear of the overwhelming enemy. Horde, he said, his voice barely a whisper. A single word that sent a fresh wave of cold dread through the room. Horde. Alexei and Igor were instantly beside him, peering out through other cracks in the boarding, their faces pale with dread. Oni idут сюда, Igor stammered, his voice trembling, the nervousness in his eyes replaced by raw terror. They are coming here. Mnogo. Alexei's voice was low, grim, filled with a chilling realization. Очень много. Many, very many. My blood ran cold. A fresh wave of adrenaline surged, but this time it was mixed with a profound sense of dread and helplessness. I moved quickly to another window, trying to see through the narrow gap in the boarding, trying to confirm what they were seeing. Through the rain-streaked darkness, I could just make out shapes in the distance, shambling, a dark, moving tide that seemed to stretch endlessly. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, a sea of twisted forms and relentless hunger, and they were heading directly for the village, surrounding it. The sounds grew louder, a rising chorus of groaning, shuffling feet, scraping clothes, and that horrifying, wet clicking sound that always accompanied their movement. They were coming from all sides, encircling us, drawn by what? The lingering scent of the creature, the chimera? The sounds we might have made entering the village? The faint glow of flashlights? Or were they just moving? A mindless wave, a tide of death, and the village happened to be in their path. It didn't matter. The reason was irrelevant. The result was the same. We were trapped. The fragile tension between our group and the newcomers vanished in an instant, replaced by a sudden, terrifying, unifying fear. The human threat, real as it was moments before, paled in comparison to the overwhelming, mindless force that was now encircling us. Our earlier suspicions of each other seemed almost comical now, a petty disagreement in the face of true existential horror. Alexei turned from the window, his face etched with despair and grim acceptance. Me v Lavushki. We are trapped. The words were flat, final. Igor was breathing fast, his eyes wide with sheer panic, looking around the room as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Ivan's face was grim, his jaw set, his eyes narrowed. He looked around the room, assessing our meager defenses, the flimsy walls of the old house, our limited weapons and resources. The house wasn't built to withstand something like this. No building was. Not against that many. Sasha, though still weak from her injury, pushed herself up fully, machete in hand, her eyes fixed on the sounds outside, a grim determination replacing the fear on her face. Artem was staring out the window, his face pale with terror, but there was a spark of desperate resolve in his haunted blue eyes. He gripped his crowbar, ready to fight, even against impossible odds. Yuri remained silent, a shadow in the corner, but I saw his head turn slowly, his eyes scanning the walls, the ceiling, the floor, the windows. Was he looking for a weakness in the house, a way out? Or was he assessing the strength of our cage, the inevitability of what was coming? His stillness was both unnerving and strangely focused. The sounds of the horde were everywhere now, a deafening roar of inhuman hunger, pressing in on all sides. We could hear them reaching the first houses at the edge of the village, the sickening sounds of them tearing through wood, breaking glass, their low moans echoing through the night. We were in the center of the village, in a house that was now completely surrounded. The ground vibrated slightly under the sheer weight of their numbers, a low, persistent tremor that resonated deep in my bones. The standoff with the newcomers was over. They were trapped with us, uninvited guests, caught in a trap neither of our groups had set, but that had been sprung by the relentless, chaotic force of the apocalypse itself. The plan to find the bunker, to seek answers, to understand the conspiracy, it was all gone now, replaced by the immediate, terrifying reality of being trapped in a small house, in an empty village with a horde of thousands outside, and the lingering question of what else might be in this village, what other dangers, human or otherwise, had been drawn by the same terrible forces that now surrounded us. Our immediate future was reduced to one brutal question: survival. This is James Carter. We chased a monster and found ourselves in a ghost village. Now, the village is anything but empty. It's filled with the sounds of the coming tide. We are trapped. The walls are closing in, and I don't know if we'll see morning. The allegories are screaming now. The inescapable consequences of unchecked forces, the fragility of human structures against overwhelming chaos, the terrifying unity of a singular, destructive purpose. If you're still out there, if you're listening, if you want to know if we can survive being trapped by a horde of thousands, if we can find a way to break out of this village, if we can trust the uninvited guests now trapped with us, then please, subscribe to Beyond Blackout. The real nightmare has just begun, and we are right in the middle of it with nowhere left to run.